I want you to try and imagine the last time you were so sad that you wanted to cry. Not a pleasant thing to do. But you may have had this tight, heavy feeling in your chest. You might have felt your eyes feel this pushing feeling as tears sort of welled up. And under it all, you may have felt this sort of hatred that you were in this state in the first place and wanted more than anything to get out. Now imagine, instead of feeling that for a short amount of time, you felt that for days, weeks, years. That's not hypothetical. Major depressive disorder, which is what I'm describing, affects about 1 in 6 Americans. That means in this room of, say, 20, 30 people, about 5 of you have or will suffer from it. And we need to understand more about it. So what my lab does is we look at a chemical that's known to be disrupted in major depressive disorder called serotonin. That image up in the top right, that is actually a picture of part of the serotonin system. And we do it through a method called PET imaging. And our goal in this is to find out aspects of the serotonin system that identifies people who are at risk for this disorder, so we can actually give them preventive therapy before they have to suffer. But there's one problem with that. A lot of these psychiatric disorders actually have their roots in childhood. We can't do this in children. To get that image, we need to inject a radioactive compound. It's safe in adults, not safe in children. So what I aim to do is sort of bridge that gap using a much less invasive measure called EEG. That little girl is wearing an EEG cap. Ours is similar. It actually looks more like a shower cap. What I'm doing is I'm comparing a PET image to an EEG signal in adults. And what I'm finding is that if you play tones at different volumes, you can actually take a part of the EEG signal and it significantly correlates with what we're seeing on PET. I mean, imagine that. You have a $10 EEG giving you the same information that a $6,000 to $15,000 PET scan is giving you. Now what that means is basically we can do EEG in children who are at increased risk for depression, say they have a family member with depression, and we can actually do this test, see if they are at increased risk, if their serotonin is out of whack, and we can then have them go to therapy and actually make a difference when they can benefit from it. Thank you. Have you ever felt so sad that you wanted to cry? I asked that rhetorically. We all have. I'd like you to take a moment and try and remember what that felt like. Maybe you had a tightness in your chest. Maybe you felt a sort of heaviness behind your eyes as you felt tears trying to force themselves out. And maybe beneath it all, there was sort of this frustration that you felt this way and this strong desire to not feel this way anymore. It happens. But imagine having that feeling for weeks, months, years. What I'm describing isn't hypothetical. This is major depressive disorder. It's a debilitating disease that affects about 1 in 6 people, which means in this room, which looks to be from anywhere from 50 to 60 people, that means 8 to 10 of us have or will suffer from this condition, which means it's super important for us to actually understand it on a deep level. And that's what my lab does. We use a technique called PET imaging to study a chemical in the brain called serotonin. Serotonin is known to be disrupted in major depressive disorder. And that, in the top right corner, is actually a serotonin image from our lab. And so our goal in actually looking at the serotonin system is seeing who is at risk for this disorder. And if we know that, then we can actually get them started in therapy so they can maybe not have to suffer. There's just one problem with that, though. Major depressive disorder and many other psychiatric illnesses actually have their roots in childhood. You can't do that on kids. In order for us to get that image, we have to inject a compound that's radioactive, and that's dangerous. In adults, it's fine, but in kids with rapidly developing bodies, it can be very bad. So I aim to bridge the gap between what we like to do and what we can do using a method known as EEG. This little girl on the screen here is wearing a system similar to what we use. It's like a shower cap. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking adults, I'm having them do both EEG and PET and comparing the results. What I'm finding is that if you have someone doing an EEG and you play them tones, you can actually get a signal that correlates significantly with that PET image. Imagine that. I mean, you have a $10 EEG doing the same work, giving you the same information as a $6,000 to $15,000 PET scan. So with this, hopefully we can make a difference in these kids' lives when they can actually benefit from it. Thank you.
Our second place award goes to How to Peer into the Brain Safely and Cheaply. Rajapillai Pillai.